I'm not a communist. I do not believe in socialist and communist economic principles, such as the elimination of private property and a total absence of social classes and money. While this is something that sounds theoretically utopian, in reality, empirically, this type of system largely fails to generate economic growth and prosperity. So let me reiterate one more time for those who were not actually listening to the words coming out of my mouth. I am not a socialist and I am certainly not a communist. What I am is a social democrat, a progressive, a moderate on the global political spectrum. And this leads me to my second point. I am not a total capitalist. I do not believe in an unregulated free market, and I do not believe the government should have a minimal role in the economic system. I'm not a total capitalist. Again, I am a social democrat, a progressive. I believe at a time where the average CEO makes over 300 times the wages of his or her average worker, that is simply an unfair and a rigged economic system. I believe at a time where the richest 0.1% of the country control more wealth than the bottom 90% of Americans, we are living in an unfair and a rigged economic system. And you know why it's rigged? Because the American workers' productivity is shooting through the roof. We're busting our butts out here, working longer hours than other major countries in the industrialized world. But yet our wages, they're remaining nearly stagnant. The top 1% is gaining over 58% of all the income gains. The middle class has drastically shrunken. The government programs that strengthened the middle class in the past, they've been weakened, and some of them have been eradicated. All the while, we have millions of people who cannot support themselves and their families as they languish in poverty. Yet those people, they work 40 or more hours per week. A lot of them, they're busting their butts for their families, but they are not being rewarded. That is a travesty. This occurs at the same time that 1/4 of profitable corporations pay a net zero in taxes. Average people's opinions are statistically proven to have no effect on the political outcomes in this country. Just ask Princeton University. They did a study on it. The system has been rigged in the ultra richest and the huge corporations' favor, and they've done it by buying off the vast majority of the people who make the decisions. It's a sad, sad state of affairs, and it's something that I believe the progressive economic plan can go a long way in solving, because the income and wealth disparity in this country, it is so drastic and it's widening at such alarming rates. We need a redistribution of wealth in this country. And then this is where some groups of people will simply tune out what I'm saying and they'll call me a socialist, a Marxist, a communist. They'll throw all the name calling out there. I implore you to actually listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth, because the words that will follow here, I believe, they are common sense solutions that most of us can really agree on. And here's how we will moderately redistribute the wealth in this country to common sense levels. So first thing we have to do is increase the tax rates on the ultra rich and huge corporations. If 1/4 of profitable corporations are paying a net zero in taxes, that is an atrocity that must come to an end. During the golden age of economic expansion in America, the marginal tax rate was between 70% and 91%. This means any money that was made above a certain threshold, when it came to the rich, it would be taxed between 70 to 91%. Now, I think that a 91% tax rate in this day and age is ridiculous. So I would place the marginal tax rate at about 50%, meaning above a certain point, their money would be taxed at 50%. With the extra tax revenue, we can cycle that money right back into the economy through a variety of government programs, such as tuition-free college. In just 3 years from now, 60% of jobs will require a college education, but yet only 31% of people aged 25 to 29 have a bachelor's degree. This is a troubling development and something that we must address immediately if we want a strong workforce for generations to come. I believe that a college education should be attainable for anybody with the heart and the drive to get it. And I believe the government has not just a moral, but an economic obligation to give people that opportunity if they want to go for it. This will allow ordinary folks to become employed in more advanced industries and simply just get some more money in their pockets. Now, another proposal that would really help redistribute the wealth in this country is the expansion of welfare programs. Now, of course, welfare spending has drastically increased over the last few decades, and currently we already spend a tremendous amount of money on welfare. I get that, but there is a huge need for welfare programs and its expansion. We have nearly 48 million people living in poverty here in America, meaning they do not make enough money to support themselves and their families. However, We have a solution to this epidemic that is proven to work, and it's in welfare programs. Without food stamps, an additional 8 million people would be living in poverty at this moment, according to a study from Pew Charitable Trust. And without Social Security, over 52% of our elderly people would be living in poverty. These are essential programs that should not be cut but expanded so that we can assist the remaining 48 million people living in poverty to escape that terrible predicament as well. Now, one final policy that will really help spread around the wealth in this country is raising the minimum wage to a wage that people can actually live on, a wage that people can actually feed their families on, a wage that people can actually pay the rent on. Okay, a $15 minimum wage, while certainly towards the lower edges of the working class, that will provide anyone a basic living. And that's all we're asking for here. If you work 40 hours per week, you should be able to take care of yourself and your family. That's simple. And a $15 minimum wage would provide that across the country. Now, obviously, it would take some time and some patience to implement a measure like that. Businesses and the economy as a whole would have to acclimate to those changes, absolutely. It would take at least, I think it might be 5 years to lessen the impact of that as much as feasibly possible. But because obviously the vast majority of businesses couldn't just double the minimum wage they pay their workers overnight. However, we've got to raise the minimum wage to at least a living wage ASAP. It's a moral obligation because of the fact that if you work a full-time job, you should obviously be able to support yourself and your family. But it would also boost the economy because obviously if more people have more money in their pockets, that means more people are buying and utilizing the goods and services inside the economy. That means more economic activity. Vast majority of people win. But I think that what I just laid out here, it is common sense. It's not radical. I think it's something that most people are really going to be able to agree with. I don't care what political group that you affiliate with. I don't care if you're conservative. I don't care if you consider yourself a freaking Nazi. I don't care if you consider yourself a freaking communist or a socialist. We can all agree on these things. Okay? Making sure that the ultra-rich and huge corporations, they pay their fair share. Making sure that the impoverished and the low-income people in our country get some assistance. And making sure anyone working a full-time job can support themselves and their families. While, of course, every program has its weaknesses and side effects, I think overall, for each proposal that I just named, the positives outweigh the negatives, and it will overall have a prosperous impact for the American people.